Alright, ladies and gentlemen, after a very long period of time, it's 3:43 in the afternoon, I'm actually going to do a review on Wonder Woman. I think I've gathered my thoughts together enough to be able to do that review. First of all, here are your thoughts on the movie here. So you have W. Mir. It definitely was a great coming-of-age story like Jenkins said it would be. It does not touch Man of Steel or BVS either cut, but comes close. I think it's a hair above Suicide Squad. True Ninja Tactics says Wonder Woman was pretty flawless. Flawless, you say? It doesn't come close to Man of Steel or BVS though. It needed more depth in my opinion. Okay. Darkstorm Phantom said the film was great. The character development was really well done. I've just posted my review and the film is a win for the DCEU. And Tom Cabler said, I forgot to mention the characters and character development was the best I've ever seen in any movie. Wow, that's a hyperbole there, I think. So yeah, that's your responses. Don't forget to leave some more responses if you haven't. Check out this video, leave your responses down below there. Let me talk about this movie after this. So this here is a toy that you can pre-order. It is a Wonder Woman toy that has the likeness of Gal Gadot, and it's a 1/12 scale. That means 6 inches tall. It comes from Mezco Toys. Look how much it kind of resembles Gal Gadot. Really nice. I really like it, and got some good movability as well. Mezco Toys. That's what you're looking at. These guys here. Okay, it's by Collectors for Collectors, and here you can see. It's a 1/12 scale. You can pose, play, and display it. Alright. I thought I would share this with you guys. You can pre-order 2 days from now, which will be on the 6th of June. Alright. So I just wanted to talk about that. Back to Wonder Woman. What did I think about this film? It was a solid film. Emotionally, this film had me in almost tearing up. I mean, I was teared up a little bit, but not tears. Tears were running from my face. And it's because it's got these emotional beats to it. It's got this emotional pulse to it that you immediately emotionally get involved with the main character, which Patty Jenkins focuses on, which is Diana, Wonder Woman. Okay, this movie is about her. It's about her experiences through her eyes. She's telling the story. So immediately there's a focus to this story, and therefore the tone centers around Diana. And it's a tone that is epic, it's inspirational, and in spite of all the tragedies and the horror that you see in this movie, it continues to maintain that inspirational tone throughout. So there's a tone throughout this movie, and it's set by the musical score of this movie. The musical score contributes to that tone. The acting is along a very precise line. Patty Jenkins has a precise vision. She has a precise purpose of the acting. Everything in this movie has a purpose behind what's happening. It's very specific. So it's very focused towards Diana's story and driving Diana's story forward. So the music, the acting, cinematography, the directing, the tone, the elements in the movie, which would be the comical elements, the adventure elements, the action elements, are all designed towards telling Diana's story. Nothing is just there because I want to throw in a slapstick joke, or I want to throw in some sort of action sequence with no relevance. Everything has a specific relevance, and the vision that Patty Jenkins had for telling Diana's story is very, very much clear. From beginning to end, it's a very clear vision. It's also very linear in its vision. You have one throwback scene, and that's it. You go all the way through the movie with just, I think, one more throwback scene. No flashbacks. And then finally, most importantly, Patty Jenkins makes sure that you get exactly what Diana stands for by the end of this movie. Okay? So you get to see the character being shaped, and you're very clear on what she stands for at the end of this movie. So these are very important things that Patty Jenkins really worked on. She really thought about, and she put it together in the movie. But I must say, the story of the movie is a Zack Snyder story. It's very similar to BVS's story, very similar in style to Man of Steel's story, very similar to Sucker Punch's story, very similar to 300 Rise of the Warrior story, and Rise of the Empire, and 300, the original 300 stories. They're very, very similar. There's a lot of sacrifice in these stories. There's tragedy in all of these stories I just spoke about. And all of these stories I spoke about that Zack Snyder has done, whether he's written his own story or he's, directed, they've all had drama. They were all dramas. They were not really action films. They were dramas that had action in them. Sometimes they have a little bit of comedy in them. Sometimes a little bit of adventure in them. Okay? And every single one of them has been an action fantasy movie. Alright? All of them. So Zack Snyder's got a lot to do with this story. It's been tweaked though. And the screenplay writer, I believe it's Alan Heinberg and Jeff Johns, who doesn't get any credit here, but he's probably somewhere in the background. These guys really wrote the script in such a manner that it assisted Diana's story. Notice I speak about everything in terms of story. Alright? Patty Jenkins directed the story, however, in Patty Jenkins' style of directing. And she was able to highlight elements in the story that we've never seen before in any comic book action movie. Never. Alright? Now, in terms of this movie, was it better than Batman v Superman? Was it better than Man of Steel? Was it better than Suicide Squad? This movie had a better plot than Suicide Squad. It had as good a story as Batman v Superman and Man of Steel, but in terms of plot, its plot was clearer than Batman v Superman's plot. Okay? Because of the linear way in which the story was told. It had a much more clearer ending, which people would empathize with more. It was not controversial than Man of Steel's ending. Man of Steel's a pretty good story as well, but it was kind of controversial with the decisions that were made and so on. Even though, as far as I'm concerned, made perfect sense. This was not as controversial, the ending. And again, you were very clear on what Diana was about, so that the ending couldn't be controversial because you were clear about what she was about. So, in terms of all-round general acceptance, this movie is going to be the DCU film that is generally much more accepted. And, most importantly, this is a movie that all ages of people can go see. Families can go see, children can go see, no matter their age, etc. It's an extremely brutal movie. But Patty Jenkins has been smart enough to highlight certain aspects of the brutality without putting certain elements of brutality in that. She was also very careful how she handled Diana's character. And also, she was very careful to note how Steve Trevor's character and his motivations and so on fit into this movie. So there's a lot in this movie that is anti-war, anti-conflict, animosity, hate, and those kinds of things. This movie is anti that. So it's a movie about war, but it's an anti-war movie. Okay? And that separates it from, say, Captain America, the First Avenger, even though there's some things which they have in common. Okay, and the movie, like the critics have been saying, it feels heroic. I'm saying Batman v Superman was a heroic movie, so was Man of Steel. It was a heroic movie, but this movie captures heroism in some of the most unexpected places. We see heroes in this movie. Okay, all right, so. Having said that, let me just talk about some of the pluses and the minuses of this movie. It's a solid movie. By the way, I've spoiled myself by looking at every single clip and every single article on this movie. So when I went into this movie, I kind of had some ideas about how it was, and I have seen quite a lot of this movie in terms of action scenes. But even so, this movie's not about the action. The core of this movie is about Diana, her understanding of the world and how she sees things, and her value system. So really, when you look at this movie, it's more about that. And that's what makes this movie bigger than just a comic book movie or a superhero movie. It's about an experience of one person, and never even once in this movie she was called Wonder Woman. Not even once. So this is about Diana's journey and a sort of recap of how she got to where she is at present time. Okay? Now, what else I have to talk about? The acting, I talked about the cinematography, also fit in. The music, of course, set the tone for the movie, and it's what kind of gave the emotional strings of the movie, as well as the directing of the action and the atmosphere and just the screen, the scenery, and then the acting on top of it is what kind of created the tone of the movie that was consistent throughout the movie, even though we are changing places and events and timelines and all of that. Alright, so based on this now, I have some shortcomings. Some scenes were just way too dark to be able to distinguish. There were not many scenes, but some scenes you kind of have to imagine what was going on the screen. I was watching this in 2D, not 3D, first of all. So in 2D, I couldn't always see everything that was happening because it was so dark. So I would suggest somehow, even if you want to keep the darkness, somehow you got to get a clarity so people can actually see what's going on. So that was one of my critiques, negative. A second negative critique is that at times I'm not sure where exactly I am in the movie. And this sort of has something to do with the story. The story needs to let you know exactly where you are. And even though the actors say where you are, sometimes you have to ask yourself, well, how did they get to that place? What, are they on the border between this country and that country? And you know, I was sometimes thinking, what did they just leave Themyscira at a different point on the area of the Themyscira, and so that's how they ended up in this place instead of ending up in another place? Because you can't be coming from the Ottoman Empire, you know what I'm saying, and you enter into Themyscira, and the next thing you know, you leave Themyscira and you're heading towards London in a day. Come on now. Unless Themyscira is this kind of mythical place in space that sort of, or maybe he was flying for a long time from the Ottoman Empire, and actually Themyscira is closer to England. I don't know. I don't understand it quite. I don't know if it's in the Bermuda Triangle. I don't know. But at the end of the day, what I could say is I didn't exactly know where I was all the time. That's one thing. So I had a little question mark. 1 minute I'm in France, next minute I'm in Belgium. Am I really? Am I? I don't know. So that was a negative thing. The pacing was good, but the pacing had me sometimes longing to be one place more than it actually showed. But it was to the point. Everything was to the point. So I didn't really have a problem with that. Because this is a fantasy film, it's not as realistic as the other DCEU movies we've seen. It's actually less realistic than Suicide Squad, Batman v Superman, and Man of Steel. Okay? But because you're going to be emotionally invested in the characters, some of the ridiculousness that happens, you actually buy into it because of the characters. But there's some ridiculous things that actually happen in this movie that shouldn't happen. Okay? And it's not to do with fantasy. It's not to do with, you know, super strength, superpower, and that kind of thing. No. I'm talking about there's some really ridiculous things that happen, right? But you buy into it because you buy into the style of the movie, and you buy into the characters so heavily. So that's another critique I have of the movie. So these are the pretty much the downsides to things. But if you liked movies like Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, you liked movies like Superman 1978, where it's a little bit wacky at times. Well, this movie has some little wacky moments, little dispensation of, you have to basically throw away your beliefs that this is realistic. And once you can do that, then it's okay. Most superhero movies are ridiculous anyway, and they're premise on ridiculous things. There are only a few that, you know, you kind of say, well, okay, you know, we can rationalize this and that. And like Man of Steel was much more realistic, and Batman v Superman.
Right.
So anyway, having said that, what did I think of the acting? How did the acting serve to move the story along? The acting really was impressive. I was most impressed with Robin Wright's character, Antiope. That character brought something new to the table that I had not seen before in any movie. And I thought this was really remarkable in terms of a general. And you can contrast that character with, say, Danny Houston's character, which is General Ludendorff, and you can also contrast it with the generals in London, how they conducted business. And you can see then that there's a lot of things to question, really, if you really put it in perspective. And that's what makes this movie kind of unique. It sneaks up on you with some things you've never seen before. A very epic moment in this movie was what you're seeing in front of you, Diana going into no man's land. It's a very epic moment in the movie, and it really makes sense when you see it. Okay. Aside from that, I really liked anybody who basically interacted with Diana was going to be a person of interest, because Patty Jenkins from the get-go had you emotionally invested in Diana from the moment the flashback began. And the character of Steve Trevor in this movie was precious. I think Chris Pine was able to portray some gentleness that I've never seen in a male character, and I thought that was something I'd never seen before. And I guess it's because this was a female-led comic book movie that the male character had to have some of those attributes. And then you had also, like I said, Robin Wright's character, which was more than just a general. She was more than that. That's all I will say for now. I don't want to spoil it. And then you had the other supporting cast, which all did a very good job. They did a very good job for what they had to do. It's a comic book movie, so you don't go super duper deep into characters, okay? So yeah, that's basically my non-spoiler review of the movie. Where do I rank it? So this movie gets a solid 8 out of 10 from me. Solid 8 out of 10. It's a solid movie. It builds up to the third act. The third act is solid. I really like it. Everything has purpose and relevance to them. I thought the story followed logic, and it had purpose and relevance. And the characters that were there to bring purpose and relevance. I actually enjoyed General Ludendorff's character quite a lot, and Dr. Monroe. And I could kind of identify with them, even though they were villains. In terms of Ares, the character of Ares, quite an interesting character. Well, let's just put it that way. He wasn't on screen for very long, but when he was, it made sense why he was there. As to the other characters, such as Etta Candy and Chief and Charlie and Samir, they also they didn't go into them in great detail, but yet they had a lot of personality. They had a little bit of history that made you care about them and hope that they would make it to the end of the movie. So basically, like I said, this is an 8 out of 10 kind of movie. I think that in terms of origin films, this movie hits a little bit more spots than Man of Steel did. Man of Steel was based in realism, but it had heavy moments, but it didn't. There wasn't a payoff for the heavy moment, if you understand what I'm saying. For instance, when Superman's father died, he was just narrating the story to Lois Lane. There wasn't a payoff. What do I mean by this? If there's a sacrifice paid, then it should be something to motivate the character to go on later on and do something good. And that's what I mean by payoff. So in this movie, like almost all Zack Snyder films, there's tragedy in it. But there was a payoff in this case that worked out to be a sort of positive payoff because of these things. So that's where Patty Jenkins kind of was able to take it to the next level. So In terms of my comic book movies, I would think that Wonder Woman will be a much more widely received film, much simpler plot to BVS, but and a better ending than Man of Steel. And you know, people always remember the endings of films. So that I think this movie ranks above Man of Steel, but below Batman v Superman Ultimate Cut. Okay, I think it might be a little bit better than Batman v Superman theatrical cut, only for the reason that, again, people can see it. But for me, Batman v Superman, both Ultimate and theatrical cut, go above it. Man of Steel is just either on par with it or below it. And then you got Suicide Squad. So of the DCEU movies, I think that Wonder Woman is there at the top. They have it rated. A lot of critics like it. Doesn't mean it. I think they all rank it somewhere around 7.5, 7.6. I thought Man of Steel would be a 7.5, 7.6, maybe 8.0. I thought Batman v Superman was 8.5 theatrical, and then I think the Ultimate Cut is a 9.0. So I think Batman v Superman brings a lot to the table. Wonder Woman, in terms of plot and story, doesn't do as much, but it executes really wonderful. So I mean, it's very beautiful to watch, and it leaves you reflecting on things, but also having a sort of inspired feeling at the end of it, even though I was feeling a lot of loss at the end of it. So there you go. That's my non-spoiler review of Wonder Woman. I hope you guys enjoyed it. You know where I rank it now. And I think it's going to do well at the box office. On that note, you guys have a great one.